Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Rodney. Good morning, Kay Carl. And good morning to all of you out there, Carrie and
Yeah.
you and Chloe. We're so glad to see all of you.
No, I can't hear you.
I am so excited to have Kay Carl with us this morning. Kay Carl, I'm going to move you in the middle here. There we go.
There you go.
And oh, you can't hear? Oh no.
Can't hear.
Oh
Oh
no.
no. Okay,
All
Carol, you
right.
might go out and come back in. Go out and come back in. Okay.
Okay, he's
Carol.
going to go out and come back in and we'll talk in the meantime.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah, but I'm so excited that he's with us because, man, I tell you, the last week and a half have been the craziest
Mm-hmm.
in America. I mean, it is just mind blowing, and the reaction to it is just as mind blowing
Yep.
to me. So I'm very eager to get Kay Carl's response to all of this.
Yeah.
And one of the things I asked him specifically was that I wanted him to come on and talk to us about the whole political climate in the light of Scripture.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
So
There we
let's
go.
see if we can.
You're
Can you
back.
hear him?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
got you.
All
There we go.
right.
Right. K. Carl's
All
back.
right.
Yeah. Well,
Hey, how you all
Okay,
doing?
Carl, we're doing great. Let's catch up with you for just a minute. Last time we talked to you, you were all over the country speaking. Have
yeah.
things slowed down a little bit for you? Are you still on the go a lot?
Still on the go. I'm a big. Can you hear me? That listen, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
We
can
can
hear
hear.
you. It's a little choppy, but we can hear you.
Yep. Uh-oh. K. Carl froze again. Oh no.
Oh dear.
Well, just I guess as a little fun tidbit, over the weekend while we're waiting on K. Carl, he might. You there? You there?
Yeah. Can you hear?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
There we
Yeah.
go. There
Yeah.
we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Satan doesn't want us to do the show for some reason. We got to find out why.
Oh, we
No,
got it. We got it.
yeah. No, I've been
Yeah, I was gonna
traveling a
say, what
lot.
in the world are you gonna say, Kay Carl?
I have no idea. We're gonna find out here in a minute. But no, I've been traveling a lot. I'll be in this kind of grind of traveling and training up till the election. Um,
Mhm,
for me, this is a very important election in terms of
mhm,
preserving our God-given rights for those who want to, in my opinion, transform us to something else. And so
mhm,
we got to engage people and get people to vote uh, in a way that's going to be unifying and
mhm,
back to our founding principles. I think that's important.
mhm. I
Yeah.
agree with you there. What are you seeing as you go everywhere talking to people? What's the pulse of the country right now?
I say majority of Americans, about 3/4 of Americans do not like the way and the direction our nation is heading. And I'm
Mm.
talking about and there's some polls, national polls that supports where about 75% of Americans, to include Democrat, Republicans, and Independents, think we're going in the wrong direction. And
Mhm,
this whole direction going towards socialism, going toward supporting policies of that's anti-spirit of God.
mhm,
I
mhm.
don't have to get specific what they are, but you know what I'm talking about. There's,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
come against our children. They said it, and there's some parents on both sides of the political aisle who are not
Mhm.
happy with that, especially when they do it in our school system. Don't even tell the parents what's going on. So
Right.
Right, right.
they like to see more unity. They like to see politicians out there
Mhm,
who are talking about values, uh,
mhm,
family,
Mhm. Right.
uh,
mhm,
talk about the American dream, and
mhm,
more patriotism for our country. We've been attacked from other countries coming across our border freely. And so
mhm,
there's a concern
mhm,
among many Americans that we're on the wrong track, heading in the wrong direction, and you're going to see
Mhm.
them vote differently.
mhm,
Wow.
Yeah,
mhm.
in the election.
One thing I was reading recently that I wasn't really aware of, and I don't know if our viewers are aware of this or not.
Mm-hmm.
Most people think that the ones coming over our southern border are all from Central or South America, and that they're
Mm.
fleeing oppression or they're looking for better opportunities because their own countries are not doing well. But
Mm.
actually, the statistics are showing that more people from the Middle East and from China have been crossing our southern border over the last 2 months than any other nationality.
Yeah, and our borders are
So,
wide open. I mean,
yeah.
just think what happened last October with Hamas. They came across, they broke through the gate and into Israel. Well, our borders are wide open. We don't have a gate. So they're coming through. So you're exactly right. And we can't be naive enough to think that is not happening. We do have enemies in this country. And we do live in what I call a post 9/11 era, where our friends, they want to take us out. And yet we have an administration that believe in open borders. They don't make any daggone sense.
No.
And so when you have open borders, you have chaos. And we don't need chaos. We need order.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't believe that everybody's going to be a friend of America. I mean, there's countries around the world that are jealous of our freedoms, jealous of our opportunities, our technology, our people, just the American lifestyle. And they don't like that. And so we do have to be very, very vigilant at keeping our borders and having order. If people want to come here, they go through the proper process to apply for their citizenship. That's the way it used to be. You know what I mean? Okay, Carl?
That's what it should be. Yeah, that's what it should be. But when you have an administration that does not abide by those standing laws, you're going to have where people just coming across. And our security at stake. I mean, Doug has talked about one time, he said the first duty of the national government is to protect its citizens. And we're not being protected.
Wow.
That's
so
true.
we got so a lot of people vote differently. And a lot of people, they're not. I'll say this: what I'm finding out, especially in the Black community, the Black community, people who don't normally vote Republican, they're voting Trump because he's Trump. And Trump's personality is so dynamic. That's why they're voting for Trump. They're not voting for Trump because he's Republican or he's conservative. They're voting for Trump because he's Trump and what he has to say. And so, and they're sick and tired of what's going on now.
Yeah. So let me ask, K. Carl, do you think the assassination attempt made any big shift in people's thinking about whether or not they were going to vote for Trump or not?
I don't think it's a big. I don't know yet if it's gonna be a big shift. I think you're gonna get some people who are some sympathetic voters who say, "Wow, this man's willing to take a bullet for what he believes in." So I see a lot of that. But then again, on the other side, you got the left spin in this now that it wasn't a bullet; it was somehow a piece of glass that was fractured from a teleprompter that hit him in the ear. So it all depends where they get the news source from. If that's going to be a significant balance in his support.
Even if that were true, I would be thinking, well, but what shattered the teleprompter? A bullet, right?
And what shot that young man in the head, right?
Yeah, and they've got pictures of the bullets whizzing by his head. There's actually two circulating now. One of a bullet that was going behind him, and then one of a bullet going in front of him. So actually, he was getting shot at for sure.
Well, he even said he heard a whiz sound go past his ear. I don't think a sharp piece of glass will make that kind of sound, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
And
hit him with the impact it did. Yeah, because he said something about he said the impact of it was so huge.
Yeah,
and he'd never felt anything like that before. He said he knew right away it was a bullet. So,
but it goes to show you how divided we are as a nation. Now, my personal belief is, I think it was an inside job. There's no way in the world this guy can walk around on that field for hours and people pointing at him for minutes in advance, and nobody takes him out, and that building itself was not secure. That's my concern. And because
I think everybody can see there's something not right in this whole situation.
President Kennedy, now that President Kennedy's assassination was an inside job. That evidence now has come out. So, and Dr. King's assassination was an inside job. In other words, where the government was orchestrating it and behind it. That don't surprise me.
Right.
But what caught my attention, I said, "Oh my gosh, that man!" I said, the hand of God must be on this guy, because to avoid that assassination attempt, that's something you can't take lightly. Because it could have gone left. It could have gone the other way, and
You're
where
right.
we would be now
Absolutely.
easily gone the other way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Very easily.
K.
And
Carl,
I'm thinking,
Carl, do you think it's an issue of also we need to have greater and more work about mental illness and things like that in America? Because I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, regardless of how you're going to vote on one side or the other, you got to make sure that you are mentally sound. There's a lot of people out here who are following things that's on the internet. There's a lot of people who they're not doing research, and they're just assuming certain things are true.
you're exactly right.
You see what I'm saying? And I think that there, I mean, regardless of how you're going to vote, for someone to take something to that extreme, that young man lost his life, thinking that this was something to do. And it's sad that even happened. It's sad that, President Trump had to go through that, and there were other lives that were lost in the process of that.
I agree with you. I've always contend that we don't have a problem with guns. Are not the problem.
No.
The problem we have is mental illness and mental health,
that's
and
right.
that's who's pulling the trigger. I think so far in all these situations we saw these high school shootings, all these children was on some type of should have been some type of medication they were not taking. So we have a mental health problem in this country is not getting addressed at the state level. Because the state, when they cut budgets, that's the first thing they cut. They cut mental health issues and concerns and addressing that. I agree with you.
There was a group that I was tied to here in Southern California, out of Carson, California, and it was called Friends of School Mental Health. And believe it or not, all of the schools within the city of Carson, California, the principals would talk, and they would also talk, are our kids coming to your campus causing problems? So they had really good communication, and they started cutting back on having mental health people in the schools out here. They cut the budgets for that. And if a child felt like they needed to go see a counselor, if they had something on their heart. But now I hear what you're saying. I think it is a major issue that they're just allowing certain things to happen within the schools, and they're saying, oh, well, we're not going to let the parents know. I think, just as an example, if your child was being bullied and somebody was touching on them or doing anything, they can't keep that internal. They need to inform the parents so the parents can get involved and say, hey, we need to get both parents, the perpetrator and the victim, get both parents here and say, excuse me, your child is having some problems with our child. Can we talk this out and put it out in the open? You see what?
And Rodney, I think one of the alarming things about that law was not just that it said teachers don't have to inform parents; they're not under obligation to. It said, no, we are banning teachers from talking to the parents about these things. So now, the parents are actively being kept in the dark, and that's very alarming. When you start touching people's kids like that, I think that's when you're going to start seeing people turn that way.
Right.
I saw something this morning, K. Carl, I wanted to tell you about and kind of get your reaction to.
Sure.
Of course, we know that President Biden just this past weekend said that he was dropping out of the presidential race. Kamala Harris has now put in her hat in the ring, said she's going to be running. She's been endorsed by Biden, not endorsed yet by Obama, but she has been endorsed by the Clintons. But I saw a clip this morning I think I was on X when I saw it, but it was probably on somebody had pulled it from TikTok. But there was somebody who was sitting in their car talking about Biden dropping out, and they were literally screaming and crying, saying, no, Biden, please, and they were slapping themselves in the head. They were so upset about it. And I couldn't help but wonder, okay, what would the reaction have been on the other side of the political aisle if Trump had been assassinated? So would we have seen people doing the same sort of things, and what does that say about, now I'm not saying about the individuals, what does that say about us as a society? that we place this much emphasis and importance on our leaders.
You know, you just said a mouthful there. It goes. My impression would be some people would cheer that type of thing because the media has done such an effective job where people just hate Trump. They hate the thought of him. But and I was at a church speaking recently, and that lady told me that she can't stand Trump. She hated Trump. I said to her, I said, well, when was the last time you prayed for him? Oh, I can't pray for him. I said, wait a minute now. I thought you were a Christian. We're supposed to pray for those that we consider are our enemies, right? But you can't pray for him. So what kind of Christian are you? Don't tell me you're a Christian. What kind of Christian? So we have those who just hate the man because how the media for the past 6 years have just drugged this man through the mud, the dirt, and where he's always in the news on a negative level. The man's not perfect. He has issues. Nobody's perfect. But to answer your question, there are those who would rejoice over the fact that he's no longer a candidate and can be the president of this land and turn things around. Because there's those who are so tied to the money. There's a lot of money going to Ukraine. A lot of people are benefiting from. And he said he wants to come in and then stop that war. Boy, a lot of people stood up, and I would be surprised. That's one of the reasons they got behind wanting to take him out, because that's money and what people are thinking about. So yeah, we got to pray. We got a divided nation. We got people who are influenced by politicians who say irresponsible things, and people who are not critical minded enough and really investigate for themselves. And like I said, Rodney, they don't get up there and apply the scientific method to their life. They become a critical thinker. Right. And so they're gullible to the news, and the news is leaning left. And
Carl, I got a question. I mean, because I'm even looking at this situation, even with the Ukraine. And the thing that breaks my heart is there's a lot of innocent people caught up in all of this. I mean, there were people there. I mean, to see videos of people 70, 80 years old, and they're running for their lives and they're carrying bags. And that my heart went out to these people. I was like, you know what? These people don't have any fight in them. They don't. I mean, at this point in their life, they're not out trying to overthrow anybody. They're just happy to be able to get up and get moving, and to see something like that. And my questions, and I've had this conversation with many friends of mine. I was like, what did the United Nations do? In my opinion, if I was president and I saw Putin even starting to align to go that way, would have been like, whoa, wait a minute. What is the Ukraine doing to you that you feel that you're going to come and start to, attack them? And first of all, I think that our United Nations as a whole is very defunct. I think that there is no place in the world that there should be a tyrant. And in my opinion, I think that the whole United Nations should have had a meeting and should have said, wait a minute, after the first rocket went over from Russia into Ukraine, causing $500 worth of damage, putting one scratch on anybody, they should have said, wait a minute, hey, do you realize there were people just sitting outside having coffee? There were people who were in the hospital. There were people who were just on their way to work. They weren't attacking you. What are you doing? And then the whole United Nations should have said, stop. Because if the whole United Nations sat back and watched Putin just bomb and kill people, regardless of his reasons, regardless of anything, that could happen to anybody. That could happen to us. What would happen if somebody started bombing us that way? And the whole United Nations just sat back like they did on the Ukraine. I think that they need to really, really change this whole thing globally. I mean, and no, it's not going to be kumbaya. Everybody's not going to always get along. However, there is something seriously wrong. There is something seriously wrong, even just in that Russia-Ukraine situation, because there's a lot of innocent people, again, who had no fight in that thing. And they lost their homes, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their lives. And I mean, what do you think about that?
You know, when you think about what's happening in Ukraine, and even with the Hamas-Israel situation,
Exactly.
there's some people we sit back and say, how can you and I wouldn't do anything like that? But there are people in this world who will and are doing stuff like that, and they don't give it a second thought.
Right.
It's all about the power, and then what really bothers me about the whole thing with Ukraine, putting the United Nations aside, we're really funding both sides of that war in Ukraine. We're sending money to Ukraine
and in Israel and in Israel.
Yeah,
yes.
That's what bothers me. We're funding both sides of the war. We send money to Ukraine through aid. When Biden came in and shut down the Keystone Pipeline, we're starting buying petroleum from Russia. So now Russia has money to fight the war. Because we're buying petroleum. We're giving money, aid to Israel. And then when we bought those hostages from Iran, with $6 billion, I believe, now they got money to fight. That money in Iran is funding Hamas. So I can't, one thing, I can't vote anybody on the United Nations out, but I can do something here locally with our government and get involved and get people to vote, stop voting for the donkey, vote for the elephant, and start voting for principles that's going to unite our nation and get back to godly principles and get back to values that make sense. We're not doing that, in my opinion.
Rodney, do you feel like with all the things we've seen, in particular over the last year, between what happened in Israel, what's happening in Ukraine, what we're seeing come over our own borders, and just the whole political climate, and then especially what's happened this last weekend.
Right.
I have this sense, but I'm not out there like you, so I'm wanting to know from you what you think. I have this sense that there are more and more people who had been kind of asleep in America and who were like, I don't want to get involved in politics. It doesn't matter what I do anyway. I feel like there are more and more people who are kind of waking up and saying, no, I got to do something now. I've got to be involved now. I can't sit back anymore and just let things happen. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing more activity from people in the political realm?
Well, you're absolutely right.
Not been involved before.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm having an opportunity to do actually news reporting on a radio station here in Southern California. So, and I'm very close to being able to have my full-blown press credentials, and I really do want to be able to get out and get those type of reactions. And seeing what you're saying, you're absolutely right. People are starting to get very, very involved. They know if we don't get out to vote, I was just contacted by a group called Vote 2024, and they're like, everybody's got to vote. Everybody, exercise your right, because like they say, if you do not vote, you don't say anything. There's nothing to complain about. So, and I've heard some people saying, I'm just not going to vote. That's not the answer. We have to get out. You have to actively vote. And I understand from This Way Network's perspective, vote from your conviction, vote from your heart, vote for your family, vote for your community, vote for what you want. And I think that's going to drive people to the polls. I think you're absolutely right. Things that have been going on should not be. And again, we have to turn America around. We really need to get people involved at the church level, at the county, the federal. Everybody's got to start to communicate, because no one group has all the answers. And it's going to take a collective, bipartisan, communication, because if not, we're going to spend so much time fighting one another, be it blue or red. And instead of doing what is best for America and doing what's best for our economy and our communities and our nation. And there are things and there's so much stuff happening here in Southern California with, businesses, and you hear businesses saying, we can't afford to stay here. So big businesses are moving out of California. And so it's a very scary time. And I think that, people like Kate Carl and so many other people who are offering new solutions and a return to where we were and trying to figure out how can we make this better for everybody. I'm completely right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Rodney, it sounds like to me you're on the road to candidacy, that you might end up running yourself sometime.
But I tell you what, I ran for mayor of Compton, California, and getting into politics, honestly, I'm going to tell you truthfully, I have never in my life seen anything so wild. People would come to you, they would talk to you, and they'd say, well, what are you going to do for the community? Oh, I had it. It wasn't like I was reading off a paper. I could go like this. These are the plans that I'm going to do for the community. I was talking to the enemy. They took everything I said, had meetings and twisted everything and put it back out. So, politics, Carl, that if being considering to run for any type of political office, man, do you have to be careful, because your plans and the things that you have structured, it's almost like I know now if I were to run for an office, I'm like, I would say a lot less in the middle of the campaign.
Yeah.
I thought that, you were supposed to speak from the heart, and man, because everything you say, somebody's going to spin it and they're going to turn it.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
That's what some people do.
Yeah. Okay, Carl, what are you seeing out there? Do you feel like Rodney does, that you're seeing more activity from people, more desire to get involved?
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, people are sick and tired and don't like the direction our nation is heading. So you got a lot of people who are getting involved, and they realize they just can't vote and abdicate and leave everything and just let it go. They got to vote and agitate. And get on politicians' nerves until they get their act together and do what's right by the people. And once we recognize the power is with the people, if we can mobilize and unify our vote, we can turn things around. We can get politicians out of it. We can get into some limited terms. But we got to be involved, and we got to stop abdicating after we vote and start agitating after we vote.
Okay, Carl, what do you think? Carl, what do you think about the major issues that are facing America, city by city? Homelessness. People can't afford to have affordable housing, and then you got people who say, "Well, I don't want, low income housing near me." How are we going to fix that?
That's one of the big concerns in every major city. Is affordable houses for people who deal with this whole issue of homelessness, and people that can't afford, especially this economy over the past 4 years, they can't afford to put food on the table. So that's what I'm seeing is happening. I've noticed that in the Black community, people who've been voting a certain way all these years, they're feeling the pinch and the misery of how they voted over the years, and their lives are. An ability to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head is becoming more difficult. Cost of living has gone up tremendously, but not wages. And so that's the cries that I'm hearing from the people. But what the Bible says, when you vote people in office who are wicked, people moan. And we're moaning right now.
Yeah. Okay, Carl, quick one. I'm sorry, Nina, I keep jumping on you, but
That's all right.
I'm gonna let you get another question. But my thing is, you are about STEM and vocational education. What are you saying? Because the federal government wants more people to be certified and have some type of certification so that they can earn higher wages. A lot of people are unaware that people who live in housing authorities on average earn $10,000 a year. The federal government and the housing authorities, they want to see people at $70,000 through a certification. And so the move from just your basic job to having some type of technical knowledge so that you can earn higher wages, how are we going to get young people, minorities, and everybody engaged in? And again, also, not everybody is tech. There are certain people who just are not going to be techie. What do we do about the vocational jobs? They say for every a journeyman or journeywoman who exits HVAC, electrical, and they leave, they say no one's returning. Who's going to be able to do all this work? You can't put no robot in a building and pull wire and do all this stuff. How are we going to handle those type of vocational trades? And they're taking them out of the schools. How are we going to fix that?
You can't fix it if you take it out of the schools. We got to introduce our children to STEM, be able to work with your hands at a young age.
Right.
My son is now 13 years old, and so guess what I got him doing with me? He's out there working on a car. And I remember when I was my dad was so wild. I remember when I was in high school. I went to work with. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So my Bluetooth just went out, so I don't know if I can hear you well.
Oh.
My Bluetooth just went out. But I wanted to work at Burger King, right? My dad said, "Nah, you're not gonna work at Burger King." And there's a member of my church. He had a body shop. He said, "You're gonna go work in the body shop. I know he can't afford your salary. I'm gonna pay your salary, but you're gonna have some type of where you can do something with your hands. You're gonna have some type of skill, not just retail, customer service skills. You're gonna get out there." So I was out there working in the body shop when I was 16 years old instead of working at a fast food restaurant. And I thank God for that today because I'm saving a lot of money. And when things get tough, I can rely on my skills. I can work on people's cars and do things like that. But but we got to introduce it to them not really in the high school level. I think we need to start in elementary school.
That's right.
And at least introduce it to them. I know with STEM, we're starting with daycare, introducing STEM to daycare in preschool level. So why can't we do that with other things? Probably can't get out there and crawl in the crawl spaces, but we can introduce them where they can start work with robots, work with their hands, manipulate things, and work with tools instead of being afraid of it.
Do you believe that there should be a hybrid, a 50-50 between vocational trades and STEM?
I think we got to make it where, based on the child's talent, make it accessible for them to choose which way they want to go. And so I like what you just said, but I also try to put a bow around it. Make it accessible. Give them information to work on. My son is 13. He's doing an internship. You want to be a lawyer? Okay. I got a friend of mine that's a lawyer. You're gonna follow him around during the summer. So why are we gonna wait till college to get an internship?
Hell no.
That doesn't make sense. You do an internship starting in the 6th grade if you want to.
That's right.
Okay, so let me ask a hypothetical here. I think part of the value that we've been told over many, many years is that the value of a classical education is for those children who don't know yet what they want to do, and or maybe their idea of that keeps changing. And obviously, as they get a broader education, they'll find out about things that they didn't even know existed before, and they might have an interest in one of those. Is a classical education becoming obsolete now? Is it something we need to set aside in favor of a different model, or is there still value in having a classical education in school?
I think why can't we do both? Why can't we offer them a classical education at the same time? I think one thing what we're doing with our STEM program, Rodney, you appreciate this. We're teaching science in all the classes, even in music. That's science.
That's right.
Right.
Even in literature, that's a form of science. So what we've done, we're integrating math and science in all of our classes. We don't believe in all right, class, close your book up, put down your science book. Now we're going to talk about math. We're going no, it all goes together. So I think even in classical education, we can blend it all because that's how life is. We don't sit in a work in a cubicle and work and it's okay, everybody, we're gonna work on a math project. Okay, no, you give somebody a project and you got to apply all of it. You got to apply, be able to write and to read and put sentences together and think, and as well as math and science. You got to do all of that.
Yeah, and logically sort out problems.
That's right. So why are we teaching it that way?
Right.
I think that's part of the problem. We got to blend it all together. And then education, and I think would be more interesting. The children won't be bored.
You know, and one thing that I remember when I was in college, it was just the experience of being in a room full of people, my peers, different backgrounds, different nationalities, some probably different religions. It didn't matter because that is a representation of what life really truly is. You're going to be, because I've been in class and then there's one guy, he's a smart aleck or something. And then there's some guy that thinks he's smarter than everybody. And when you get in life and you get on the job, you have all of these different personalities. And the one thing that beyond me learning, I was also learning about everybody in the classroom. And I said, you know what? When you get out in the real world, there's going to be this one guy that's going to be Mr. Know-it-all. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some people who just don't like you and they're just not going to support you. And so I experienced it all for me. And I think that, you know, what we have in America is a problem about truth. It's just like I said, we've got, you know, you've got the governor of Florida and he's trying to say, hey, we don't need to be teaching about, you know, diversity and we need to leave that all out. I mean, I think that we need to get the truth out, let the truth fall as heavy as it's going to fall, and let everybody understand that this was then and it's not going to be repeated. It's not going to be tolerated. And it's not about trying to cripple, you know, little Johnny because of this heavy. I think more young people now, because of the advent, children are not what they used to be. Children have this, and they are so they're far more advanced than even some parents. Yeah. And their critical thinking and their logic is, though it is the mind of a child, because of where we are as a nation and all of this data that's being pushed down on young people, we have to let the communication flow to the point where we look at our nation and the mistakes. And that's where you've been, K. Carl, talking about the Frederick Douglass Project. Mm-hmm. You know, having that Frederick Douglass.
And I'm glad you said that, Rodney. I'm not sure. And give a plug to K. Carl's book. If you haven't read this yet, I highly recommend you get a copy. You read this. There are actually cards inside with to help you with you know, learning the bullet points, so to speak. Mm-hmm. This is really, really good.
Well, let me bring you up to speed. One of the things, I've been traveling. I've been doing a book signing tour because I just released my latest book. It's entitled "Telling Conservatives the Truth," Rodney. Wow. The title is "Telling Conservatives the Truth," and the subtitle is "Leveraging the Life Empowering Values of Frederick Douglass to Save America." And my argument is, if you're really serious about saving America, defending the Constitution, defending our God-given rights, you must leverage the liberty message of Frederick Douglass, because when you leverage what a former slave had to say about liberty, God-given rights, it resonates more effectively with people. So we can't leave Douglass out of the conversation when we're talking about liberty. And so you can get this book on the website. Again, it's entitled "Telling Conservatives the Truth." And I say in the book, I tell conservatives, if you want to be more unifying, which we need to be, stop using the word conservative. Because the word conservative in the Black community is not the language of liberty, it's the language of oppression. So stop coming in our communities articulating conservatism. Once you tell me you're conservative, I'm not going to listen to you. That's like going to a Jewish community saying you're a Nazi. They're not going to listen, because that word has been so demonized and it represents oppression. So when you come in the liberty message of Frederick Douglass, you got a chance to get my ear. Then we can unite and do some things together. It's all about how you present the message.
All right, K. Carl, tell us the website where they can go get this book.
Yeah, the website is
go get this book.
Yeah, it's K. Carl. It's KCARLINC.com. KCarlInc.com. You just go to the store at the top of it, and you see the books there.
As you're typing that in, There you go. kcarlinc.com. That's right,
Yeah.
everybody. So we're just
Yeah.
going through. I see some of the just different comments, and Carrie says the administration has a plan. This is all part of it. And because of B is out, doesn't mean the plan will change. Okay. And so many different people are saying hello to you, K. Carl, and Chloe, and so, I think that this is a very pivotal time in America, and I think you're right. Vote 2024 is going to be the real deal because you got to get out there, you've got to vote, and this is going to make some change.
And I tell people all the time, don't get out here and just vote because you vote for the donkey, or you vote for the Democrat, or you vote for the Republican. Vote what you consider are your values. And for me, my priority is my faith, my family, the founding principles of this nation, and my finances. I call them the 4 F's. That's what I don't. If I can find a Democrat that espouses things according to my faith, he got my vote. But I don't see that happening right now. I'm a former Democrat. Okay, my faith, my family, my finances, founding principles. That's what I'm looking for. I can find a candidate that has that. I might agree with everything he has to say, but he has though, because that's where I draw the line, right? I'm not looking for an R. I'm not looking for a D. I'm not looking for the donkey. I'm not looking for the elephant. I'm looking for those who align with my values. Period. I'm not going to vote like I used to vote when I was younger. I just voted because I thought I was born to vote a certain way.
Okay, Carl, tell again. I know we have some new viewers that have not heard your story before. Would you please tell the story of how you came to that place where you became convicted about voting your values, and how you came to the point where you were like, how do I affect and influence my community to do the same?
My personal story is really, I was one night reading 2 Corinthians 13:5. And if you read 2 Corinthians 13:5 in the Message translation, it says, examine yourself, make sure you're solid in the faith. Test yourself. Don't take things for granted. If you fail the test, do something about it. I read it and I started thinking about it. So I started testing the way I was voting. I'm a Christian, and I was voting in a way and voting for candidates that espouses things that I personally don't agree with. And I never really thought about it. I don't believe in same-sex marriage. I don't believe in abortion, but I was voting for candidates that espouse that. So in essence, I was voting the opposite of my worship. And of course, as I thought about that, scriptures, God appealed to my spirit and said, he wasn't pleased with how I was voting. Because through my vote, I was really spitting in God's face because I was voting the opposite of what I believed in. So that's just my personal story. And I went through 3 days of depression. Really, I didn't come out of the house because all the things I thought I was doing correctly, I was not. And so I realized I needed to repent how I was voting and start voting my values. Stop looking for the donkey, stop looking for the elephant, and vote based on the lamb, the Lion of Judah. And so, and to vote without compromise of my values. So, so that's how that was my spiritual awakening and colloquial awakening.
During those 3 days of depression, were you considering, okay, if I do this, here's what I might suffer as a result?
Oh yeah, because in order to vote in line with my Christian values, politically, I would have to accept a certain philosophy. And I realized, I thought about really in terms of my values as a Christian, my values wasn't really aligned with what liberals were talking about. And it was more aligned with conservatism. And so, but in the Black community, the word conservative has a racist connotation, right? So I said, really, I have these conservative values, but I can't use that word to describe myself politically. And that's when later on I started developing this concept and so I identified myself as a Frederick Douglass Republican, espousing the same values. Now, because Douglass wrote about these things, he spoke about it. It's the same values, but I didn't have to use the word conservative to identify myself. And Frederick Douglass helped me understand these values are not Christian values, not conservative values, they're liberty values.
Right.
And
Right.
Therefore, I stopped using that word conservative, and I started teaching people to stop using the word conservative because that creates the divide in this country because the word's been so demonized. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican in terms of my political identity.
So I remember you talking about being at a football game with
Oh yeah.
some friends one year. Tell us that story.
Quickly, I was at a home, and the guy was hosting a viewing of a football game. There was about 18 to 20 blacks who were there. My friends, blacks who were there. All of them, my friends, were black Democrats, and I'm the sole black Republican there. And the subject of politics came up. When I shared with my friends that I was a black, this is before the Frederick Douglass piece came to me. I told my friends I was a conservative and I was a Republican. I'm telling you, the attacks started immediately. They called me an Uncle Tom, foot shuffler.
Ooh.
They called me the house N-word. They said your parents must be disappointed in you, and they called me everything but a child of God. So
Wow.
when I went home that night, I started thinking
And
about
these
it.
are
Look,
friends.
I gotta figure out how to have a
These were not
conversation with people.
strangers. Yeah.
Huh?
These were not strangers saying this. These were your friends.
These are my
People
friends,
who knew
right?
you.
But when I said
Yeah.
the word conservative, oh man, they jumped all over me, and I didn't know why. So I started doing some research and started reading about the word conservative, what happened in 1964, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, and then what happened was, and I was not well read on Frederick Douglass at that time. This is right when the internet and emails became prevalent. And somebody sent me a text. It was a quote from Frederick Douglass. And Douglass said in this quote, he said, "I'm a Republican, a black dyed-in-the-wool Republican. I never intend to belong to the party of Freedom and Progress." And when I read that quote, Rod, I said, wait a minute. Frederick Douglass was a Republican? Frederick Douglass was an Uncle Tom too? I said, wait a minute. I said, why did Frederick Douglass talk about the Republican Party being a party of freedom and progress, and he didn't say the Democrat Party? So that started me. Became so curious. I started reading everything that brother wrote, every speech he wrote. I read every biography in print at that time on Douglass. I read academic papers. I went on a reading binge that lasted about for 18 to 20 months. I probably read about 7 to 10 hours a day. I mean, I was on a reading binge, not just reading about his life, but his political thoughts as well. So over that time, it came to me. I said, wait a minute now. I agree with what Douglass talked about. I said, okay, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's how I came to that phrase.
K. Carr, I got a question. How do we, because now, I mean, I'm starting to see this, and it's serious, just what you've made an example of. Is there any way to turn back? Because I hear it every day, and I tried, and you listen to this thing and you start to really see it. This whole political thing is separating family members, friends, long-term friends. And what do you do on the job? Because now there is pushback, repercussions. How do we deal with that?
What's creating the divide is what I see, Rodney, is that number one, stop using the word conservative. That automatically, soon you tell someone you are conservative, you just grew 7 heads, and you just basically admit that you're an Uncle Tom and a racist because how that word's been demonized. I know folks don't like hearing me saying this, but you know it's true. That word's been demonized, or the word has been redefined. Okay, right. It's been redefined, and so you got to stop using the word that's going to create controversy instead of creating a conversation. The word conservative creates a controversy. So, but Frederick Douglass creates a conversation, and you start sharing with people, enlightening them what Douglass said about parental school choice, which he wrote about. What Douglass said about immigration, free speech, the right of people keeping bear arms. When Douglass wrote about the importance of limiting the role of government, Douglass wrote about personal responsibility. Douglass wrote about religious liberty. All the things that's really being attacked today and have been attacked, thank God Frederick Douglass wrote about it because he lived it. So when you leverage what Frederick Douglass had to say about these things, it really resonates with people because it is impossible, in my view, to win an argument with a runaway slave about his admiration for the founding fathers and his respect for the U.S. Constitution without using the word conservative. And people lean into that because now you give them a political identifier, Rodney, that they could use for those Republican versus conservative and go back to their family members and job and talk about what they believe in without using trigger words, conservative.
And that's the other side of the story.
Word.
Yeah, that's the other side of the story I wanted to get to, because one thing that so impressed me about your story, K. Carl, and I think this mirrors actually Douglas himself, was you were not content to be walking in your own liberty now. You were looking back and saying, you know, all those friends that were ridiculing me before, they're not walking in liberty either. I know that they hold the same values I do, and yet they're still voting this other way that goes against their values. That means they're not walking in liberty. I'm not content for them to be bound that way. And
the other part of that story, the second part of that story,
I want you to
a year later, I invited those same 18 and 20 Black Democrat friends of mine to my home to watch a football game. And reluctantly, Rodney, they came, and the subject of politics came up again that night. And they said, okay, Carl, he's a Republican. I said, wait a minute, I'm more than a Republican. I'm more than a conservative. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. And I believe in the things that Douglass wrote and spoke about: respect for the U.S. Constitution, respect for life, limited power government, personal responsibility, the right of people keeping their arms, the right to vote. When I shared that with them, all of them started talking about how they were a Frederick Douglass Republican too.
Quick question.
Yes, sir. It worked.
What do you think? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that we're getting hung up on this Republican, Democrat, just those titles, right? Conservative or liberal. Why? And that matter of fact, and this is, excuse me for my ignorance of having, what was the whole purpose of having Republicans and Democrats? Why don't we have a one-party system that is about America, about family, about justice, about religious liberties? Let them fight instead of the people on the outside fighting. Let them fight, get it right, and bring it to the people of America so that we could say, okay, we got a one-party system. They are working for us, the benefit to keep our schools safe, keep our streets safe, affordable housing, take care of our veterans, all of these type of things. How come they can't get it together? Because I don't think the fight really is on the outside. I think the fight is bigger inside, the political structure. And
I see where you're going with this.
And that's pouring out into the community and how they're talking on one side and how another group is talking. That is confusing people, and we're getting away from the most important thing, America and God's.
I agree. I think there is a divide and conquer element in this, but also I don't think a one-party system will work, because who's going to be in charge? I mean, and who's going to be in charge? What's going to be the values? And if I disagree with those values, then if they're not in line with my value structure, then I'm out. I'm stuck.
Okay.
So, well, think about it. Think about it. I'll put it this way. Thank God. I think there's nothing wrong with. I'd like to see more than one political party, to be honest with it, because they're always opposing views, but you have to discuss them you have to have a discourse that's constructive and not destructive of one another. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. They're using all kind of inflammatory words in their conversation. These politicians aren't talking about American citizens, talking about their political opponent. And instead of having adult conversations that's going to bring us together, they're not doing that. They're pushing a certain agenda. Like, for example, we got a political party that pushes Marxism. I'm not about Marxism. If that's the one political party we got, then we got to fight. We don't have a civil war, right? So we got to have more. We got to have more than one political party espousing of that. But somewhere we got to come together. That's your point. Somewhere we got to have unity. And one of those things, I think that's what Americans can drive. There was a study that came out of Stanford University, 2019, and the study was done by some sociologists at Stanford, and they said that if politicians talk about values, family, patriotism, American dream, they can get liberals and conservatives alike to vote for them instead of talking about issues that divide. Values unite, issues divide. And most what politicians do, they don't talk about value, they talk about issues. Got to stop talking about issues and focus on values. Because that's where most Americans have the common ground, and that's when we get to our unity.
That's what I appreciated about your story, about when you came back, or actually you invited your friends and you were talking to them the second time, and you appealed to them about their own values because you knew their values were similar to yours. And once they realized you were talking about values, they started agreeing with you, say, well, yeah, I held that value. I agree with that. And by the end of the evening, they're all saying, well, I guess I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican too.
Yeah, the key was I didn't use that trigger word. I didn't say Republican. I didn't say, I remember I said Frederick Douglass Republican, which is different than just saying Republican, right? And I didn't use the word conservative. I got rid of those trigger words and start talking about these are things that Douglass wrote about. And I said, okay, I agree with Frederick Douglass. Matter of fact, I hold Frederick Douglass the highest esteem. I agree with what he said about these things. And guess what? They agree with it too. And many of them are Frederick Douglass Republicans today.
And that's another thing I love about Douglass's story, because I feel like you're following in his footsteps and footsteps in that same regard. Douglass was not content to just be free. He went back to the man who had been his master and said, I want you to be free too, because you're not, because you aren't following your values.
That's right. Doug said one
and
time,
he appealed to him on that basis. Tell us the story about what happened with Douglass when he appealed to the man who had been his
Doug said on one occasion, slavery wasn't only detrimental to the slave, it was also detrimental to the slave master. It made him lazy. Douglass said. But what you're talking about is about a year. No, was it a year? 10 years after Doug escaped from slavery, he wrote a letter to his former slave master, and he said to him that letter, he said, I forgive you for all things you did to me. He said, I'm going to use you as an example how men ought to treat each other. I don't know if I could have done that, to be honest with you. But I'm not there yet in my walk. But Douglas said, he said, oh, by the way, I want you to free all 400 of your slaves, to include my grandmother. He said, but until you do, I'm going to talk about you in my speeches. I'm going to write about you in my book. I'm going to call you out on Twitter and Facebook until you free all 400 of your slaves. Within a year of Douglas's agitation and the power of repentance, that slave master within a year freed off all 400 of his slaves and brought Douglas's grandmother out of the hut in the field into the big house where the master was taking care of her and feeding her and cooking for her. And Douglas said he heard about what happened, wrote a second letter to the slave master and said, look, I heard from a very good friend of mine that I can rely on that you have ceased to be a slave master. He said, that's good news. And you have taken my grandmother from the field, treating her like a horse out in the field, into your own residence and providing for her. He said, that, my friend, is what Christianity is all about. And so Douglas had this ability to forgive his slave master based on all the things he did to him. Douglas said, I'm not going to forget it, but I do forgive you. And that story of forgiveness is very powerful, because what Douglas didn't tell the slave master, you need to forget, you need to tell me you're sorry. Douglas didn't say, okay, come tell me that you're sorry. Come and tell me that you feel bad what you done to me. Douglas started off by saying, I forgive you based on what you did to me. And the slave master responded in kind with freeing the slave and turn his life to Christ.
Yeah.
Because of Douglas.
I love the fact that Douglas was not, like I said, he wasn't content just with his own liberty. He wanted the rest of the slaves freed as well, but he also wanted that former master freed from the bondage that he was in. He showed concern. He didn't do
like, remember a few years ago, you had some groups telling white folks you need to get on your knees, and they're doing these videos, getting on their knees, telling black folks they're sorry. This whole thing about apologizing, Douglas realized it worked both ways. apologize for the slavery that you've done to me, but also I apologize for generalizing you think you're a racist. It worked both ways. And that's what's missing. We want to forgiveness one way. No, it worked both ways.
Right, right. That is so powerful. I heard a quote this past week, and I've been thinking about it ever since. And I've been thinking about it in light of the political landscape. And the quote is, "You cannot influence the people you judge." So when we sit in judgment on other people, we have no influence over them anymore. And I think this is part of the reason there's so much polarity in the American political climate, or had been. But we can change that. And I think Douglas is the example going forward.
Douglas is a divine fit for the times we're living in right now. When Douglas was live with Abraham Lincoln, Lincoln said on one occasion, he talked about how the United States, because of the Civil War, is a house divided. We're divided right now. We're not divided as much as we were at the time of the Civil War, but Lincoln said we're a house divided. And he brought Douglas in to be his counsel. And Lincoln listened to Douglas. So therefore, Lincoln improved. I think it's wise for us today to get into the liberty message of Frederick Douglass, lean into it, and apply it today, because there's nothing new under the sun. Douglas talked about,
Right.
we got to talk
Right.
unity. We got to stand up for principles that are morally sound, and not to compromise what we believe in, and hold politicians in both parties accountable. Douglas kept Lincoln in check, and Lincoln improved. That's what we got to do with whoever the president's going to be. We got to keep them in check, and don't let them run amok, push an agenda that don't agree with us. I like what you said, Roger. We got to be involved. People got to be involved in the political process and stay engaged, and get on politicians' nerves.
And K. Carl, but do you think that a lot of the decisions that people are making in the comments are because of spiritual depravity? Because there's no way for you to be a true Christian, love the Lord, follow, his principles, and to be able to vote or feel some kind of way about people, whether they're the color of their skin or whatever else, and a lot of people, because I've had people ask me, well, who do you think's going to win? And I said, I'm going to tell you who's going to win. Who's going to win this election is who God allows to win in this election. And I think that everybody needs to be on point and be prepared for whatever the outcome of this election is. Get behind that man or woman or whoever it's going to be, and follow godly principles for this nation, your immediate family, yourself, community, and everything else. And we march forward, because there's a reason why this election is coming. There's a reason why all of these things are happening, and we must move forward. And me personally, I tell people all the time, I said, they ask me who's going to win. I say, the person the Lord wants to win. So we better be ready for it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I've been out here involved in politics almost 20 years now. Just telling people, vote your values, be involved, agitate politicians, and get them to do what's right by us, and don't sit anything out, but understand what your values are and support politicians and get them to support your values. I have my personal belief, my personal idea who I like to win, but that's just me.
Yeah, and each person should be. I think the first time I heard you speak, K. Carl, that is really more than anything what resonated with me, is hearing you talk about voting your values, and how much I recognize that too often I and people around me were not doing that. We had a certain set of values, and yet we were voting for people who didn't even claim to espouse those values, or were putting them forward. I don't even know why we were doing that. It's like we're in some kind of, drugged sleep.
Yep.
That's the way it felt. So
I think once we do that, we can save this nation. We can save this nation in 1 or 2 election cycles. If people get involved in the legislative process, become agitators and start voting based on values and do your homework. Do your homework. Don't just listen to what's on CNN, Fox News. Do your homework. Ask Siri to help you in terms of what the platforms are. Ask Alexa to help you. They'll help you. And that's what's missing, I think.
Get that Bible in hand. And get that Bible in hand. That'll help you.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
And do that.
Absolutely.
And don't just go based on what you hear on TV all the time because they have a certain agenda. Do some homework. It takes some time to get this right. Look, I'm critical about my faith. I don't just listen to anybody.
No.
But why am I critical about my vote?
Right.
I got to be critical. I can be critical minded. What I'm saying, my dad told me one time. I tell my son this all the time. I said, son, don't believe anything I'm telling you. My son said, well, Dad, you gonna lie to me? I said, no, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I want you to understand, no matter who's talking to you, you make sure you check out what they're saying all the time, including me, because sometimes I may get things wrong. But you got to question everything, absolutely everything that comes to your ear. I don't care who's talking it. I don't care if it's your pastor. I don't care if it's your teacher. I don't care if it's a professor. I don't care if it's a friend. I don't care if it's your mother, your father. You start learning how to think for yourself, and you agree or you don't agree with it. But get into practice of questioning things. There's nothing wrong with questioning it.
That's right.
Do that all the time.
Right. Yeah.
All the time.
Absolutely right.
Wow.
And as Carrie says, homework. Read Kay Carl's book. So let me go up here and before we, let me see, let me find it again. Before we close out, this is where you can get the book at kcarlinc.com. And this is the book, the name of the book, Telling Conservatives the Truth.
And we got a shirt on there. I think it'd be ideal for Rodney. Ideal. It's a shirt. It's pretty edgy now, Rodney.
Okay.
It says the original badass Republican.
Hey,
Frederick Douglass.
Love it.
Hey, Frederick Douglass. That's all right.
Rodney. I want to see you in that shirt.
Hey, we got to
It's in the store.
I'm a large.
Put it on. Go. All right, buddy.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I can't believe the hour is already over. As usual, it went way too fast. But Kay Carl, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. I miss talking to y'all. Let's do it again soon.
Hey,
we always enjoy
Carl,
you.
We're gonna get you one of these. This is the coat of arms right here, brother. I'm gonna get you one of these. This is what it's all.
I'll wear it with pride, buddy.
I'm gonna get you a large, brother. Coat of arms.
No, you better get me a 2X, brother.
Get you a 2X. No problem. We get you one.
No, a large. You got me thinking too optimistically, and I'm just gonna be real for you. Give me a 2X.
There you go. Well, you got the muscle, so it's all good, brother.
Yeah, there you go, buddy.
God
appreciate
bless
it.
Hey, God bless you, Kay Carl, for being on with us. And Nina, close us out.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the This Way Network. And y'all be of good courage because God is with us and we are not alone. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. See you. Have a good week.